तू जिंदा है, तू जिंदगी, तू जीत में यकीन कर। अगर कहीं है स्वर्ग तो उतार ला जमीन पर। तू जिंदा है, तू जिंदगी, तू जीत में यकीन कर। अगर कहीं है स्वर्ग तो उतार ला जमीन।
My journey in JNU started from 1979, about 42 years back. And I can't forget that day ever in my life when I boarded that train from my small railway station in my hometown of Balasore in Odisha. It was a very late night, early morning train, the only train that used to come to Delhi, called Utkal Express. And that took a very long time. It was a coal hull train, so coal engines were used. So it took about 2 days to reach Delhi. By the time you reached Delhi, you were tired, smelling of coal for next 2 days. But more than the coal and the engine and the slow journey, what I was anxious about is going to Delhi without knowing where to stay, how to get admission into JNU, when the entrance will start. I mean, nothing was known to us those days. The communication system was weak. The entrance was still some months away, about a couple of months away. And I was amazed to see JNU. It was like a forest, not even a forest with trees, but it was a rocky area full of rocks, bushes, not the kind of greenery that you see nowadays. But it was the lower range of Aravallis, so the landscape was very rocky, dry, and thorny bushes and so on. But the atmosphere was something I never imagined, because in the evenings in the Jhelum lawn, which is now nobody sits there, it was a beautiful lawn. Students used to gather there after dinner or in the evenings, and some students used to play instruments, guitar and so on. Others used to bring some food, sit there, listen to those music from a distance. Some were just sitting there gossiping, trying to talk to each other. It's a beautiful atmosphere. Though I didn't know anybody practically that time, I didn't know anyone. But from a distance, I used to watch these things, get really amazed by this kind of atmosphere in the lawns, and felt very nice about being in this place. I was a student of history with two special papers on Russian history and Soviet history. So I was fairly well acquainted with Russian history society. So I applied in both the centers, history and Soviet studies. Those days we had in schools, the school level interview also. It was not just a written exam, then the center level viva. There was a school level viva also. The second level was really intimidating, because the dean of the school, along with all the heads of departments, used to sit in a room. And you enter there, you see this professors, so many professors sitting and asking questions from any corner in that room. I got selected to both history and the Soviet studies, which I had applied in SIS. But I opted for Soviet studies because I had my background in Soviet history and Russian history, and I got the fellowship. I topped the list in SIS. Now, JNU, the experience initially, the adjustment problem was there, because the food was different. We had never had food like rajma, chola, batura. These things were not known to us. We had different food habits. Then the language problem, the Hindi, and in the hostel, the sort of elite culture prevailed. So in the hostels, if you go, you will be in formal dresses, unlike today when students go with lungi or shorts, go to formal dresses. The food served in JNU was in hostels, included even French toast, which I never heard of. When you get up, you say, "Excuse me," to person sitting on both sides. These were the standards in JNU, which we adapted to. But soon, in the 80s, the whole effect of the admission policy, the deprivation point, came into effect, and JNU gradually became more of a non-elitist institution attracting students from various backward uh, social groups from backward regions of the country and tried to create talents out of them. That is the success story of JNU. And people from most backward districts and communities came here, studies, used these opportunities, and went out as very developed personalities with a lot of talent. We could socialize and pick up the culture very quickly because there are many avenues for socializing a person, apart from political groups, cultural groups, performances, and the seniors, the way they welcome students, help them. If you do not have a hostel seat, accommodate with them. You get, sort of socialized into the campus atmosphere. For me, it was much easier because I was politically active in my college days, MA days. So I became politically active here. So I could have so many friends within the organization and also our members from other organizations. You interact with them, become close to them. Then you have to go to rallies. It's a time of tremendous activism internationally and within the country because post-emergency, a new government had come, there are a lot of activism going on. And internationally there are issues on Palestine, on racism in South Africa, and Nelson Mandela, to free Nelson Mandela. So many movements were, and we used to participate in them. Sometimes listen to other speakers who had more knowledge about these issues. Sometimes we had to also speak, so we used to prepare for that. That is how, gradually you gain a lot of knowledge about politics, about international relations, so many things. And this was a learning curve for me from where I came from and where I arrived later on. This was a learning curve, and JNU, thanks to JNU, that I was able to learn so many things quickly and become active. When I was the General Secretary of the Students' Union, Mrs. Indira Gandhi visited the campus. She was second time elected after, Janata government as a Prime Minister. And we led the massive protest in that. And she had to quickly leave the venue because of the massive protests that we were leading. Because during emergency, our student leaders were picked up and put in jail. And that was something that the JNU student couldn't forget. And the same reason, when I became Teacher Association President, also in 2016, when our student elected president and others were picked up by the police and locked up, we also decided that we will protest. The same culture remains because in JNU ultimately you learn the debate, discussions, arguments in dhaba, in mess halls, outside classrooms. That creates knowledge also, not just reading books. And this culture is what we inherited, this political culture of shunning violence, no vandalism. We used to give the example of other universities where it is very easy to kill a movement, finish a movement, when the student leaders resort to violence, vandalism. So we tried to avoid these things, and most of the time we succeeded in, in arousing the consciousness of the students through debates, discussions, and arguments, and lectures, and so on, rather than indulge in vandalism or violence. When I joined JNU in 1989 as a faculty member in the center where I did my PhD, that time it was called Soviet and East European Studies. I joined there in 1989. Now the point I want to highlight here is, when I joined, JNU's brand was very high. The brand value of JNU has reached, by a very high level due to the quality of teachers that there were in JNU. People like Bipan Chandra, Romila Thapar, Sabyasachi Bhattacharya, Sudha Bharadwaj, economics, Prabhat Patnaik, Utsa Patnaik. Then we had Bagchis. And history we had so many. Sociology was a great center, political science. And in SIS we had unique professors because SIS in any case was a rare thing in the country. We started in 1955 in Sapru House through the Indian Council for World Affairs. And when JNU started, this was the first school which shifted to JNU, first school, SIS. Now, it had its faculty members who were experts in their own fields, the big names, and the dean, some of them became ambassadors later. But the main thing is that these professors, these great teachers who brought so much of name to JNU and fame to JNU, they didn't have the kind of infrastructure that we enjoy now. I also got the same like them, one table and a chair and small iron bookshelves, a side shelf. That was all. They didn't have AC or cooler, and still they could accomplish so much. And today we have so much of infrastructure. If we do not accomplish, if we do not take JNU to greater heights, we are doing a tremendous injustice to the legacy of those professors who served the university and to the whole generation that contributed to the growth of this university. Now, I had great teachers because I came from that generation whose teachers were the first generation of faculty here. So they were my teachers. In my center, I had great teachers like Professor Devendra Kaushik, Professor R.R. Sharma, Professor Jafar Imam, and Professor Arvind Vyas. I had peers like Professor Samsuddin, Professor Nirmala Joshi, Professor Shashikant Jha, Professor Anuradha Chinoy, and Professor Tulsiram, and Tahir Asgar, Dr. Tahir Asgar. They were, my contemporary, but they were peers, and they were working hard, so I had to really be level with them, reach their standards. So I worked hard on that, and I improved, I think, over the years since 1989. And the current faculty which is there, they have all been students and I was a faculty. But they have always, as my colleagues, they have always given their love and affection and respect to me. Some of them have traveled with me abroad, Dr. Archana Upadhyay, Dr. Rajan Kumar, Dr. Fulbadan, Dr. Sanjay Pandey, they have, Dr. Preeti Das, they have traveled with me abroad and they have taken care of my health, my comforts whenever they are with me abroad. Let me make huge number of very close friends in the former Soviet Union. Excellent friends who accepted me like family members, and never let me feel that I am away from India, I am in Russia or Central Asia. Or some of the names that can come to my mind is Tatiana Shaumian, Evgenia Bonina, we have Gujal Strelkova, Professor Alikber Alikberov, who has been very close friend of mine, is now the director of the Institute of Oriental Studies, Moscow. From Kazakhstan, I have good friends like Mara Gubaidulina, Sanim Guldasova, my student who is now teaching in the Eurasian University, Aigul. She did PhD with me, now teaching. I mean, these are people with whose families I have visited and been always helpful to me. And in Russia, in other parts of Russia, Buryatia Marina Baldano from Ulan-Ude, Professor Lamin from Novosibirsk, Professor Dyatlov from Irkutsk. I was privileged to meet these people by being a faculty of JNU and learned about the culture in their countries by becoming very close to them and their family members. This was a privilege that I gained by being a part of this center. Many of my foreign colleagues made me feel at home whenever I visited their countries. Professor Umarov, whom I met first in an international seminar in Mumbai University in 1985, and who later sent his comments on my PhD draft, became a close family friend. He never let me stay anywhere but in his home in Dushanbe. He took me to places as beautiful as Gorno-Badakhshan in Pamir region on the Afghan border. Similarly, Dr. Abdurrahim Jurayev always put me up in his house in Khujan, took me around, including to the border area with Kyrgyzstan, separated by Sirdarya, where we once had a great afternoon by the side of the flowing river. On the Kyrgyz side, I had earlier visited Fargana Valley cities of Osh and Jalalabad with my then PhD student Indira Musaeva. I've lived with her relatives in Osh, as I did with my other PhD students, for example, with Dildora's family in Tashkent and Aigul's family in Almaty. In Russia, a very close friend of mine, Gujal Strelkova, who is herself a scholar of Hindi literature and speaks very good Hindi, she once put me and my family up in her late mother's flat in Moscow, and she has also many times stayed in my house in Delhi. There is Professor Eugenia Vanina, who is a scholar of India and fluent in Hindi language. Dr. Vanina has been full of affection to our students and faculty, or scholars who go on ICSSR exchange program. Whenever they visit Moscow, she takes personal care of them by taking them for a tour of Kremlin, Red Square, Lenin Library, for lunch, and helps them in any way she can make their life comfortable in Moscow. The students are the soul of any university system. So are they in our university also. They have tried my best. I have tried my best to be a friend to them. It can be said with full confidence that I hardly ever disappointed my students. This is not just about the 56 students who completed their PhD with me, or the 68 MPhil students who acquired their MPhil degrees under my supervision. Many more students of the center over the years who needed my advice and support have received them without any hesitation. Their demands were not much to satisfy. They just looked for care and attention when they needed, guidance in their academic career, and sympathetic hearing about their problems in life. I'm happy to say that many of my students have kept in touch years after they completed their PhD, meet me when they are in campus, or when they are in Delhi, or when I visit their states. The love and affection of students sustained me over the last 32 years of my teaching career. They kept my spirits high and made my life meaningful. Many of them are in academics, administration, journalism, and various other fields. But despite the ranks they occupy, I have never felt that their love and respect has waned in any manner towards me. I have seen the kindness and concerns of the students of JNU for the suffering people in the country. Two instances come to mind to stress this point. I was part of the Odisha Sanskritik Parishad OSP, whose president I was for a number of years. During the super cyclone in Odisha in 1999, when about 10,000 persons died according to official reports and more than 20,000 according to unofficial estimates, the OSP worked day and night to collect relief materials and funds for the affected persons. Finally, I, with a few of our colleagues from JNU, went with 50 students to distribute relief materials in Odisha. Another devastation was caused by tsunami in the Indian Ocean in 2004. JNU Students' Union sent a group of students to travel with me to Tamil Nadu to distribute relief materials directly to the affected people in Nagapattinam districts. JNU has given me a lot, shaped my vision, and facilitated my access to the wider world. Did I give back to my university in any way? I think I have done my bit in a limited way. I have been an academic council member for 9 years and 1 more year as an invitee. I have been 4 years a member of the Executive Council, the highest decision-making body of the university, both as an elected member and as Dean SIS. I have been involved through the AC and EC with many decisions to improve the functioning of the university, its norms and rules, etc. But the most important activity in my view was my role as the chairperson of the Deprivation Points Committee formed in 2015, which raised the points from 10 to 12. After long deliberation with student groups and with the data for a few years, we are able to raise the total points to 12. Girls from socially and regionally deprived background are getting 7 points now, and other girls are getting 5 points this was accepted by the AC in 2016. The regional deprivation point remained the same, 5 and 3 respectively. The system has helped JNU in getting more women students, and their share is more than 50%. Particularly heartening is the increasing participation of women from backward districts and deprived social groups. As the Dean SIS, I, along with my faculty colleagues, decided to hold the third All India Convention of International and Area Studies Scholars in 2018. It was a Herculean effort without the support of the university or the government. We are helped by JNU alumni who are heading Jamia Millia Islamia. Professor Talat Ahmad was then VC of Jamia, and Dr. T.C. Raghavan, who was heading the Indian Council, Director of the Indian Council of World Affairs in Sapru House. Colleagues from the school who had U projects also helped with funds. We managed to gather around 250 scholars for the convention. We are also happy by Professor S.D. Munni, Emeritus Professor of the school, who was instrumental in organizing inaugural session, valedictory session and plenary sessions, which were addressed by former very well-known diplomats like Ambassador Shiv Shankar Menon, Ambassador Shyam Saran, Ambassador Mira Shankar, and Ambassador Arvind Gupta. There are many memories in my long association with JNU since 1979 as a student and 1989 as a faculty. For 42 years, I have almost continuously been a part of JNU. Both my two brothers, my elder brother's wife and her two brothers studied in JNU. My wife, Ela, did her MA and MPhil in economics from JNU. My elder brother, Professor Ashok Patnaik, did his PhD from our center. I married in JNU in the old campus, club building lawns, where the students used to hold their general body meetings. My late in-laws retired as professors of JNU. Professor Suman Gupta was professor of philosophy, which was then in the School of Languages, and Professor Vijay Gupta, who was a professor of African Studies in SIS. I loved them both and had great respect for them. Their values coincided with mine in a lot of ways. My mother-in-law was a very kind-hearted person with a very big heart. I learned from her how to be empathetic and kind to students who come from distant parts of the country. My wife, Ela, is herself an established and eminent economist in her own right. We have two wonderful children. Megha is teaching in a university in Rome. Ansh has completed his BSc from Australian National University, Canberra. As I grow older, they have been taking care of me in many ways, especially regarding my health and when I need help with technology and online platforms. My son's friend Himani has been helping me in preparing this video. She has done her MSc from Life Sciences JNU. Her constant prodding encouraged me to present my story through this medium. The story of my journey to and in JNU would be incomplete without saying a few words about my parents. My father, Abani Mohan Patnaik, was obsessed with the education of his children from our childhood. This resulted in all 6 of us getting educated at least up to master's level. But it was due to my mother, Nayana Patnaik, that 4 of us could go for higher education in Delhi. Coming from a village, married in a town, she never went into a kitchen for cooking. Always active for public and social causes, she was a very strong personality. A government school in my town bears her name. In the mid-70s, when women entrepreneurs were rarely heard of, she took loans to start a bus business. From one, she acquired 2 buses, and that is how we could have a decent education in Delhi, including one of my sisters who did her PhD in the US. No words will be enough to express my gratitude and love for her. Even 8 years after her passing away, I cannot get over the loss of my mother. 2 teachers of mine who have played a huge role in my academic progress, in furthering my knowledge, were Professor Devendra Kaushik, who, in my opinion, was the best scholar of Eurasian studies in India, and in my opinion, nobody has touched that level till now. He is no more. He was once the governing body chairman of Maulana Abul Kalam Azad Institute of Asian Studies, where he where he initiated this Eurasian Studies program and the Central Asian Studies program, which is very active with the help of his student who became the director of that institute. The other teacher was, or is, Professor R.R. Sharma, who was twice Vice Chancellor of Jammu University and the Dean of SIS. He was my own PhD supervisor, who played a major role in shaping my research, in shaping my knowledge, everything. So I still remain indebted to him, and he's living in Jammu. We are in close touch, like he used to be in close touch with Professor Devendra Kaushik. Privileged to associate myself with Professor Devendra Kaushik, and we both brought out a journal, Contemporary Central Asia, which completed its 20th year in 2016. I especially thank the chairperson of my center, Professor Archana Upadhyay, for organizing this meeting. Though at times I have been the target of her outbursts, most of the time she has showered me with respect and kindness. She deserves special appreciation for having come out with 2 edited volumes during the pandemic times, one on 100 years of Russian Revolution and another on transition in post-Soviet Eurasia, polity, identity and strategic choices. Both are from internationally reputed publishers like Palgrave, Macmillan and Routledge. I feel privileged that I have contributed articles to both the publications. I thank all my colleagues and friends from India and abroad, my students and all others who took time off to hear me and express their sentiments. Let me end by saying this. I have such close and personal association with this great institution that it makes me ever nostalgic. And this beautiful dream called JNU will always remain with me till my last breath. Today, when I look back on that trip to Delhi in 1979, I am still amazed by the enormity of my journey since then till now. Thank you. चलेगा?